Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Steven Universe. Today, finally picking back up where I left off with Barnmates, which will undoubtedly pick up right where we left off in the previous episode. Same old world, with, I can only assume, Lapis still not very happy with the fact that Peridot's there on the barn when Lapis thinks that the barn should be just hers. So, yeah, I assume that this is going to be a rather interesting episode, seeing how I assume Lapis probably tries to come to terms with Peridot being there. Peridot probably trying really hard to gain her approval and probably failing. Just an assumption, but let's see what happens. So, let's begin with Barnmates. And go.
Even more impressed with your new compact look and capacity for friendship. I'm so glad we're going to be living together. Peridot, Facet 5. Let's begin. This isn't gonna work. Wait, what? Alone here. Help save the Earth. I even yelled at Yellow Diamond. She's probably sending a whole fleet to find me and shackle me right now. I'm kind of a big deal. Is not having fingers also your style?
No, I'm just bad at drawing hands. Inside the lapis, so she knows how.
Hey, Lazuli. Why isn't she responding?
I'm not. I don't want your garbage.
That's not cool.
Yeah? What? Were you trapped in a tape recorder too?
Yeah. Oh, she's coming back again.
Uh-oh.
They're here!
What? Peridot. Are you okay?
Aww. Uh-oh. Okay. A few minutes to gather my thoughts and then I'll be right back. Alright, time for the review portion of this video, and there's a lot I gotta say about Barnmates. It's another one of those where really not much happened until you get to the very end, really, but it had a lot to it. So yeah, let's just get into it with my favorite parts of the episode, starting with just the idea where Steven divides the barn in half, and he actually makes the comment, like, he saw this on a TV show once. He never saw the end of it, but, you know, let's try that anyway. And, you know, that's been something that has happened in a number of TV shows, possibly even some movies, and it never ends well. It never does. So, yeah, I really like that they kind of use that old trope just for the fun of this episode. Now, my next favorite part of this episode was that truly Peridot was trying so hard. Like, it goes, at first it's simply just her getting, you know, kind of frustrated with Lapis, and Lapis not trusting her, and it going against Peridot's very logical side. But then it gets to the end, and Peridot is being truly sincere. Excuse me. It was like giving her tape recorder and all that. It's like Peridot is being as sincere as possible with Lapis. She is doing her absolute best to try and convince her that she's an okay person. She's not that person that she hated all the way back when Peridot and Jasper brought that ship with Lapis as a prisoner. And I would say, honestly, that's probably the best part of the entire episode, which honestly kind of spans the entire episode. But just how sincere and how hard Perry was trying throughout the entire thing. I really loved that. Again, it shows just another aspect of how much Peridot has grown as a character. Now, my next favorite part, I will add a little asterisk to the end of it, which I'll explain in a little bit. But my third favorite part of this episode was Lapis Lazuli's responses to Peridot. Just every time Peridot tried, Lapis would just like either stare at her blankly. You know, Lapis is just truly fed up with a lot of stuff, really. And for understandable reasons, I would say. But just every time she gives that dead stare and just a blank response, it cracked me up. I really enjoyed it because, I mean, again, for someone who's been through so much, it's realistic. She doesn't want to care about any of this. She doesn't want to be with anyone from her past, with the exception of Steven, who she clearly does love. But it's an understandable thing. Again, with that asterisk at the end, which I'll comment here on in a minute. But my next favorite part of this episode was that Peridot, as soon as she realized how much the tape recorder meant to her, and that maybe giving her a part of herself, as Steven put it, would help Lapis to understand how sincere she is. The fact that Peridot actually does give her not even a tape recorder, like it's not a matter of Steven finding another tape recorder to give to Lazuli. Like, Peridot gives Lapis her tape recorder. And I absolutely loved that moment, or that entire little section up to a certain point, which again, I'll comment on in a minute. And then my final favorite part of this episode was that Lapis, you know, seemingly begrudgingly at first, but realizing that maybe she was wrong all that time, or it's like, you know, maybe it's like perhaps she's even just a little bit wrong. She steps forward and saves them, and she does seem to show some concern for Peridot. It's like, not only does she take out the roaming eye with a hilarious little, you know, bam, but she turns around and asks if Peridot's okay. And then, you know, Peridot clearly gets very happy at the idea that Lapis is showing concern. And then, you know, Lapis just kind of blushes, which I assume is, you know, she doesn't turn red, she turns a little slight deeper blue. But yeah, that right behind how hard Peridot is trying, that is probably my next favorite part of this entire episode, was when Lapis not only saves them, but shows concern. Doesn't mean she likes Peridot yet, but she showed some concern. So I really like that. And now my one and only annoyance with this episode, and it's one of those, it's annoying for me, especially being, you know, empathetic to characters. And I'm not saying it was a bad aspect of the episode, it annoyed me personally. But when Lapis breaks Peridot's recorder, it's like, it would be one thing if she says like, I don't want your garbage, and then just, you know, threw the recorder aside or threw it back at Peridot, something like that. But the fact that she actually breaks it, that jumped over the line for me. Like, for the most part, I've been able to understand where Lapis is coming from. I've been able to get what she's feeling. But in my opinion, that was just being a complete, I mean, that's just being a complete jerk at that point. That's not, as Steven puts a little bit later, it's like she didn't even give Peridot a chance. And that just pushed it even further. Yeah, that was, the reason that was such an annoyance for me was, again, because of, you know, how I feel empathy for even fictional characters, fictional rock-based characters, and how much that tape recorder meant to Peridot. I can only imagine, you know, if Peridot were a real character, how much that would hurt to see that happen. Like something she gave from the heart, or whatever equivalent they have. So, yeah, that was my one annoyance. Again, it's, maybe I should have made up a different category or worded it different, I don't know. But that's the only true annoyance I have with this episode. So, oh, and before I move on from there, I did have a moment of terror for this episode, and it was the roaming eye. Like, I did not expect, like, honestly, even when the roaming eye appeared, I thought that was going to be like, okay, that appeared, and then, you know, cut to next episode. But no, it kept going, and it was searching, and then, like, we see not only the eye, but then all of a sudden it sort of forms a cluster of extra eyes, and it was pretty intimidating, up until the point, again, Lapis flicked it and slammed it down to the ground. But that was a legitimate moment of terror for me, I think. Again, looking at it from the perspective of especially Peridot. So yeah. So again, those were all my favorites and annoyances, and, you know, moment of terror. I'd like to hear your all's thoughts on those, as well as some of your own, if you have any. Now, as for a track of the episode, again, as always, I don't know the actual names of any of the tracks, but it was the music playing whenever the roaming eye was visible. It was just this very deep and intense and, I think, very bass-heavy music. Well, not bass, but just low tones. And it was really good. It really fit the entire situation. It just added, to that aspect of it being a moment of terror. So yeah, I really liked that part of the episode. If there were any other tracks that you all really enjoyed, please let me know what they are in the comments down below. Looking forward to seeing if there were any that popped out to you all that, you know, I might have just looked over because of the roaming eyes music. Now, my quote of the episode, there were a lot of really good quotes in this one, I feel. But the one that stuck out to me because of it just exemplifying Peridot's, you know, a bit of arrogance, perhaps misplaced arrogance, but also her naivete, especially with how to deal with Lapis and her situation, is when she's talking about how she, you know, she's essentially a rebel to Homeworld. It's like she even insulted Yellow Diamond. She just basically says, "I'm kind of a big deal." That just, again, that one simple line right there, it struck me as hilarious, and it really just, it fit Peridot's perspective. And I really should have written down another quote later in the episode as it, you know, as Peridot sort of moved along, but for that one right there, it stuck with me the entire time because it was so funny and, again, so appropriate for Peridot as a whole. So yeah, any other quotes that you all want to mention or stood out to you, I would love to see. I'm sure I probably know of a few of them, but I'd like to see what you all have to say in that regard. Now, a question and a theory as for this episode. My question is, will Peridot get a new recorder? Could it be one of those situations where it's broken and she moves on from it? Or will there actually be, you know, a point where Peridot gets herself a new recorder? Or maybe Lapis gets her a new recorder? I don't know. It's only, I mean, I'm sure that'll probably, if it's going to happen, it'll pop up in a later episode. But I would like to see her get, you know, herself a new recorder, ideally as a gift from Lapis, saying she's sorry. And then my theory, and this has to do with when the cluster appeared on the roaming eye, or the sort of cluster of eyes. And if I counted correctly, I think I saw 5 eyes. Excuse me. So I have a feeling that in this next episode, within the roaming eye, there are going to be 5 rubies. I mean, I could be wrong. It could just be 3 of them, since the one that popped out had a ruby for an eye and then a regular eye. But I don't know. For some reason, I feel like there's going to be 5 rubies in the next one, which I guess I'm going to find out very quickly, as I'm going to watch the next episode here very soon. And as for my overall feelings on this episode, I mean, it should really be no surprise. As a whole, I've been loving the Steven Universe episodes for by and large, especially lately. But I really did enjoy this one. It was a enjoyable little conflict between Peridot and Lapis. Just, you know, Peridot continually trying to gain Lapis's favor, to for Lapis to not see her as an annoyance and something she just wants to go away. It hit me, you know, in a pretty strong way when Lapis breaks her tape recorder. It was just overall a well-written, well-paced episode that ended on a note that I didn't expect at all. And yeah, I guess I'll be finding out next what's going to happen with those rubies and the roaming eye. So, yeah, thank you all for being here for this episode of Discovering Steven Universe. Before I finish this up, I do want to say, as always, thank you all my Kenvians for being a part of this channel and watching these videos. And thank you to all of the patrons over at Patreon. And for any of you that don't know about it already, if you would like to become a patron for PapaKennMedia, there is a link in the description down below, and there'll also be one at the end of this video. And for as little as $1 a month, you'll be able to get early access to the various videos that I will be posting here on the channel, anywhere from a few days ahead of time to several weeks ahead of time. It just depends on whenever I upload the videos and get them ready. They will be available to you as a patron. So if that interests you at all, again, do check out the link. But that aside, until next time, everyone, for Hit the Diamond, which is actually an interesting little name. I wonder if Diamond is in the roaming eye now. I wouldn't think so. But regardless, until next time, everyone, for Hit the Diamond, I am PapaKenn, and I will see you in the next episode.